growing up in the Westside, we called it the Westside College Hill Courts. I have fun memories of growing up in College Hill Courts. One thing that really stands out is that growing up, say from the 2nd grade to the 7th grade, we didn't realize that we were poor. So it actually took a teacher to tell us that we were poor. So that was new to me. I thought the world was the West Side. I thought every place was the West Side. Started drawing in the West Side at 5 years old. And I just remember going out to play every day, having fun. And today I was thinking about the street lamps in the middle of the projects. I don't think they're there now, but it was always sort of magical to me when the sun would go down and all the kids would be riding around on their bicycles with lights. It's like a lot of fireflies, but there would be children on bicycles. I just remember playing. So my time in the West Side was the time of just playing, having fun, going to church. And that's it.
Okay. I grew up, you're West Side, and I think David is I know David is West Side too, but I'm different. I grew up in Alton Park on the South Side.
Okay.
And so that was a lot of fun for me. We lived near what they call Pine Top.
Two, though. It was two. And
with that, there were a lot of kids in our neighborhood, and so all we did was, just outside playing a lot of sports. But what I really liked about our neighborhood then, and it's not there now, is that we had a center that we could walk to. Everything we needed was right there in the neighborhood. We had stores there. James Moreland, I don't know if you all know James Moreland here in Chattanooga. He does a lot of work with the community still. He owned a store on 45th Street in Alton Park, so we could go there, get what we wanted, go down to 45th Street Gym and play. There was, the center was there. It's not there anymore, and I think that's one of the things we really need back there. And there was a post office there on the corner of 45th and Oakland. We lived on Oakland as I said, at the top of Pine Top. And Pine Top it was so much fun. We didn't know to be afraid of snakes. But there were a lot of blackberries out there, and David talks about blackberry picking too. So we would go out and pick blackberries and just have fun. It was cool. One more thing about growing up in Alton Park was, you told me you grew up in the Westside projects. Now this is crazy. This is just my story. So we didn't live in the projects. We lived in a house. My dad owned a home. But I always envied everybody that lived in the projects because it seemed like they had so many friends to play with. We just had the ones that were on our block. There were plenty of us there. But it was just like, man, I wish we lived in the projects. It looked like it was so much fun.
Okay, I, like Charlie, grew up in the West Side projects. As a matter of fact, it took me a while to even realize that it was actually named College Hill Courts.
Right.
Because we always referred to it as the projects. But one of the most amazing things that I remember about growing up there is that during the time that I lived there, it never ever seemed like it was a project. Number one, there was green grass all over the place, in the front yards, in the backyards, and everybody's backyard was fenced in. So everybody had their own private backyard, and they always, every area was kept very neat consistently all the time. And then here's another part that was really amazing to me, and still is amazing to me, is during that time when we were growing up there, we had models there for the children that were growing up.
Right.
As a matter of fact, we had professional people, teachers and principals that lived in the West Side Project. So it was really looked at as a nice apartment buildings is what it was really like there. So we had principals, teachers, other people that worked in other areas throughout town and things. And those people would always encourage us, children that were around, to get an education. That was the biggest thing that was going during that time. Make sure that you go to school and get an education. And I remember, Charlie, as Charlie said, the playing part. That was such an awesome place to play in. In the center of College Hill course of the Westside Project, there's an area that we refer to as the flagpole. That is the center of it. And it is a concrete area that has a flagpole in the middle, and it actually has water spouts that come out from the bottom of it. And I actually remember us getting down, as awful as this sounds. We would put our mouths on the little spouts and suck it until the water began to come out. And it actually would begin to come out and sprout all over the place. But this was the place on Christmas Day when everybody got their bicycles and skates. That place would be so crowded. Everybody in the projects would gather there, you know, and ride their bicycles, tricycles, scooters. Now, mind you, scooters during that time were scooters that were made out of skates. We would take our skates and tear them apart and nail them to the bottom part of a piece of wood, and then nail another part for a handle across the top. And those, you know, so those are some of the start. The skateboards, we made our own skateboards during that time. Am I going too far?
No, you're good.
Okay, I was wondering why, because, you know, my wife has a habit of cutting me off because when I start talking a lot, you know, sometimes I get long-winded.
But also we could play.
I'm also a preacher.
Yeah.
So sometimes I don't know when to stop once I start talking.
Do you remember the summer festival that would come every summer, the carnival?
Yes.
That was set up right there in the courts, right?
13th Street Court,
yeah.
right there in the middle of the 13th Street Court.
Right.
And that's exactly where I live, right there at 13th Street Court, right across from the flagpole.
Yeah, okay,
Yes,
okay.
Right there, so yes. As a matter of fact, I'm old enough to even remember when they had ice boxes.
Yeah.
What we refer to as refrigerators now.
Yeah.
But it was really, truly an ice box. There used to be a gentleman that used to ride through there with a horse-driven cart.
You're a little older than me.
And he had blocks of ice on the back of it. And he would holler out, "Iceman, Iceman," and he would stop at everybody's house and grab that block of ice and come in there and stick it in the top of it. I remember that. So, you know, but one of the biggest things there was that
Bring the mic
Westside
over here
Project
for a
was
second.
The first time
I wasn't old
believe
enough for that.
A
I don't
lot
remember
of
that.
people had what was it? Electric heaters in the wall. Rather than wood burning stoves, they had electric heaters. That's why it was such a high price little apartment building rather than a project. And the other part of this is that, as I said before, and I often have this conversation sometimes with some of my friends or associates that I'm around. If you would check, you would find that a lot of the prominent Black people within the city of Chattanooga started out in the Westside projects or the Alter Park area.
Yeah.
That's where you'll find that they originated.
Right.
Yeah, because it was segregated at that time.
Yes.
Right. And our teachers prepared us for what we would face in the world.
Absolutely.
Now,
They
they would
did.
tell, first of all, you could pray in school at that time.
Right.
Yes.
They would tell us Bible stories in school.
Yes.
You know, we would do the Pledge of Allegiance and everything, but they would encourage us that we could be anything that we wanted to, and you know, we had to show respect.
Right.
Do you remember the principal of James A. Henry School? Did you go to James A. Henry?
Yes, I started out at James A. Henry, first grade and second grade and third grade. I went to East Fifth Street.
Oh,
We
okay,
moved to
okay.
the east side of town.
Okay,
Right.
okay. Well, they made sure that we, you know, had manners. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Oh, well,
No,
you know, we couldn't leave the house without those manners.
that's
Right.
true. That's
They
true.
were taught in the
During that
home.
time,
That's true.
You
That's
couldn't
true.
leave the house without those manners right there. But I'll tell you, it was at James A. Henry was where I actually started my art career. All right. As a matter of fact, from the first grade to the second grade, my mother had to buy me a tablet every day because I was drawing in it. The whole time I was just drawing in that tablet, but the thing about it, she never complained about it.
It was supposed to be for school.
Yes, I was supposed to be my writing tablet.
Oh,
Yes, I was drawing in it, you know, so
Yeah.
she had to buy me a brand new one every day, but she never complained about it. She just bought me another one, and I just kept drawing, and eventually she bought me a sketching set.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, and then I remember my first paint set was my aunt bought that for me, and I may have been about the second or third grade when I got those. So that's
Yeah,
where my art career
so I started drawing at 5 years old.
Okay.
At that time, I was living in 14th Street Court. So I started trying to draw Superman and Batman and all that. And every year for Christmas, we couldn't get much, but I would always get art supplies for Christmas.
Okay.
And that's all I wanted. Yeah, so.
Yeah, but growing up in the West Side was quite enriching.
And everybody knew everybody's business too,
Oh,
by the way.
absolutely. Everybody knew everybody. You know, any part, I'm sure we've all heard the phrase, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, that's exactly what we had in the West Side Project.
No doubt.
I don't care where you were in that project. You had to be on your best behavior because if you weren't, they would make sure that your mother, your father, your grandmother found out about what you were around there doing. If it was way over there somewhere, by the time you got home, your mama already knew it.
There were no secrets.
Yes, no secrets.
You know, I hear people talk about that a lot, about when you get in trouble in the village, everybody knew about it. But the good thing about being a part of a village too is no matter whose house you were at when it was time to eat dinner, you could eat.
Yeah.
Right. It's not that they just always corrected us. They were just always there for us no matter what. And our village was really, really important to us because I was the oldest of 3 at home. My mom and dad separated when I was 3, my sister 2 and 9 months. And my dad raised us. And so you can imagine how the village was so important to us. All of the people in the neighborhood always looked out for us. Calvin, I did this for the girls, and this, you know, it was awesome having a village.
Yeah. And in the West Side, we had a church right in the middle of the projects, Second Baptist.
Oh, yeah, and then you go to everybody's church. I'm going to church with Miss Folks today. I'm going to church with so-and-so the next day.
Yeah. Grove Street.
Yeah, yeah.
It was fun. It was fun.
Which is the church that I'm pastoring now, Greater Friendship, and I was actually born into the church because my mother was a member of that church when it was on the West Side on Grove Street.
And so we both grew up in Greater Friendship.
We actually did, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
That's awesome. So what are some of the stuff you miss now in the neighborhoods when you drive through?
I miss, well, the neighborhood was beautiful and well kept.
Yeah.
Everything was clean, you know. And like, for instance, my parents, we were just talking before this that it seems like everybody in the West Side came from Alabama or Georgia.
Or Mississippi. My dad's from Mississippi. Yeah.
Well, my mother's from Alabama and my father's from Georgia.
Yeah.
So friendship made up of Alabamians and Georgians. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So
Chattanooga was such a hub at that time, especially with the choo-choo here.
everybody migrated.
Right.
Here.
Yeah.
And most African Americans
industry.
moved to West Side and South Side.
Yep.
As a matter of fact, during that time, Chattanooga was really the central center of the South. It was what Atlanta is to the South now. That's what Chattanooga was during that time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I do have to comment on all of the yards looking nice, the neighborhood looking good. Can I tell a funny story?
Sure.
Okay, well, my dad worked 2 jobs. So my dad worked 2 jobs, and all of the yards were beautiful, except for our house. My dad worked full-time at Crane and then Rockwell, but he was also an electrician. And so we had to come to grips with this is my work. And so we were like the Fred Sanford house in the neighborhood. Dad would have a washer on the porch working on it, a dryer in the yard working on it. And so when we got older and wanted to date, we would take the two-wheelers and take that stuff around the back. And Daddy said, you leave my stuff alone. So we just learned to say, hey, you sit on the washer, I sit on the dryer, we sit here and we just talk. It was funny. But everybody in the neighborhood was okay with it.
Yeah.
Because it was my dad, they loved him.
Yeah, another thing about that I'm noticing, and I'm sure you noticed from working at the Bethlehem Center, is that as kids, my mother told us that better not nobody, when we go to school, she better not hear nothing bad from anybody.
Oh, absolutely
because
not.
we would get it.
Yes, sir.
Corporal punishment.
No, if you did something bad at school and you got a spanking at school, you were going to get a spanking again when you got home.
The teacher was always right.
No doubt about it. There was, now, as a former educator myself, and having experienced having to call some parents and tell them about some of the behavior of their children, and having to also see the parents be extremely defensive about their children was something different according to what we experienced. As we said,
totally
the teacher was always right. If the teacher said you did it, you did it.
I think a lot of that, though, has to do with most of the teachers being black and the teachers understanding culture. And so they understood how the kids were expected to act. And I say that because now it is different, because aggressive behavior can be defined differently among people and among culture. And so sometimes when you've got an integrated situation with schools, I can just see this when we went from Alton Park to East Lake. At Alton Park, the way we were acting there, it was acceptable. We weren't bad, but we may talk a little louder than other people because we came from big families. And the home size was typically larger than the other communities, right? And so we were seen as aggressive when we weren't being aggressive. And so teachers were reporting us for bad behavior, and we're like, what do we do? I was just, it was time to talk, and I was talking. That's just the way I talk. And so when you talk about how teachers would call parents and say, hey, this happened, and parents knew, okay, that happened. But as things changed, and even now, I'm a little hesitant. I'm not one to say what my child or what my grandchildren won't do, but I am a little bit more cautious about how it's perceived, what they do is perceived. And were they really being aggressive, or were they just talking the way they normally talk and it was just misunderstood? You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely. I'll tell you about this during the time that I was teaching at Dealwood Junior High School, and that was during the time when they had the 60-40 split within the schools. If anybody remembers, when they moved black teachers from the black schools out to the white schools, and then white teachers to the black schools. Well, I had that same experience there because some of the white teachers were not particularly astute at some of the behavior that they were witnessing of the culture from some of those students, and I had to let them know that some of the language that these kids are using is not offensive. It just seems offensive to you. I say you have to understand that some of these children come from some families where this is their normal language. This is how they talk every day. This is what they hear. So, some of the things, you just have to be able to tolerate and teach them differently.
Well, and it wasn't necessarily profanity, right?
Well,
not necessarily profanity.
I was at a school on Tuesday and Wednesday doing the after-school program. And what frustrates me is that in the schools in Chattanooga, especially the artists, the art teachers, I see a displacement of our culture. Now, you and I, we grew up when there was such a thing as a black culture.
Yes.
We dressed differently, we talked differently, we walked differently, our music was different. Everything, you could zero in and know this is
And when
black.
you and I talk, we talk that.
Yes.
That's the way we talk.
Yes, it's different. And what's happening now with the gentrification, displacement, urban renewal, whatever you want to say, on the West Side for the last 2 years, I've been fighting to preserve black culture, our history, our buildings, our way of doing things. Because when you lose who you are, then your entire community is just going to disappear.
Right.
And
right.
there's some good things about growing up, that in the West Side. There's some great things about growing up black. And that's what I see now. Most of our kids in Chattanooga, at least, have white teachers. And so when it comes time to discipline, they don't know how to discipline. And if a child can't be disciplined, they can't learn.
Right.
A lot of our kids, they hear, children, they hear discipline differently.
Right.
You have to, you talk loud because you grew up talking loud. I talk loud. This is part of our culture.
Too, right.
We talk loud and we talk in stories. So we talk long. That's a rich history.
That's true. Yes,
that's a rich
true.
history
Right.
from
Right.
Africa.
Because girls always telling me, can you shorten that a little bit, David?
Right. We don't have to have all the details.
Well, there's a rich history of griots from Africa.
Right.
That's what Nellie Rowe is doing. When we look at her work, we see our
Stories
culture.
all the way through.
Our culture,
Right.
stories.
Every one of these pictures tells a story.
Right.
And it's complex.
Yes.
It's a
And
complex
eclectic,
story.
yeah, very eclectic.
She tells the whole story, right?
Right.
Right. But what I'm seeing in the schools now, a lot of our kids that I'm seeing they don't think that they can excel. We were taught to excel.
Right.
Absolutely.
We was
Right.
taught
That was the
to
expectation.
do 110%,
Right.
to be better than the dominant culture.
Right.
Or else we wouldn't have a chance.
We knew we had to be better in order to be recognized.
We knew
Right.
that.
We always
And
knew
today, a lot of our kids don't know that, and they're getting left behind.
that. Yeah.
So I do miss our
I'll tell you
culture.
something else along with being taught to be better. We were also taught, if you remember, passive aggression.
That's
You
true.
know that? That's one of the things that was instilled into us, passive aggressive. We were to be passive because we had to,
It's survival.
as a survivor.
Yeah.
But still to be aggressive all at the same time.
Yes. I remember my father, I think I was in the 6th grade. And all of a sudden I began to realize that there was a difference between our community and the white community. And I remember asking my father, how should I talk to a person if they're disrespecting me, a white person? And I asked him, I said, should I call that person sir? That was important. And he said, no, well, if they're disrespecting you, just say yes. Yes and no. Don't give them that respect of calling them ma'am or sir. So still, you don't, I wouldn't have to fall to their level, but I still could maintain my own dignity in doing that passive aggressive. They knew, because when we would walk downtown, our lives was in danger. Just a 5-minute walk downtown, our lives were in danger. Many times there were, people running from us, ladies holding their pocketbooks as though we were thieves. Now, imagine a 12-year-old, young person going into a store and people following you around or running from you, afraid of you just because of who you are.
Right.
That's stuff we had to deal with.
Right.
Yeah.
Media had a lot to do with that, because in the media for so long, the only description you got of a criminal was black male. And I was a Toastmaster for a lot of years, and I wrote a speech about that. I said, black male, that's the only description. He's not tall, short, long hair, black male. You just described my dad, my brothers, my son. And so every time they go out, he looks like that suspect. And I had to teach my son when he started driving at 16, you can't have more than one friend in the car. And that used to bother him. I said, more than one friend looks like a gang. I'm sorry, but you can only have one friend in the car. And he had to grow up like that, until he just got, well, he's 40 something now, but he's still aware of that. He's still aware of that.
To tell you the truth is that I actually didn't really experience any of that while I was growing up. I was very protected. I stayed, my parents kept me, my grandmother and all, they kept me around them all the time. So I was never in those areas where, I could be threatened by white people being aggressive toward black people. So I never really even knew that it actually existed because I was in a black neighborhood. I was always at a black school with all black children, black teachers. And then even when I graduated from high school, and this was in '69, even though there were some things going on and I knew about them through the media, I still went to a black college where there were, there's still black culture was there. I actually really didn't experience anything to that nature till one day when I was taking my son to watch the community league football team practice, and the police pulled us over and said that we looked like drugs guys. And I'm like, that was my very first experience with that. Then that's when I really had a complete understanding of it, because before then I just had never experienced it before.
Was that the time all of the police were behind you with the guns out?
Oh, that was when I was teaching. Oh my goodness, why did you bring that up?
Because that scares me still.
That was the most scariest thing I have really ever experienced. I was teaching at Dalewood then, and at the time I was living in Red Bank. And so school had let out and got in my car, and I was on my way home, and I had gotten to the red light right there at Dayton Boulevard. And I remember seeing this police car pull up beside me, but I hadn't paid any attention. I'm on my way home. So when the light turned green, I turned. And when I turned and started going straight, I heard these sirens, so I looked in my rearview mirror, and I see this police car behind me, and the lights are going. And so I say to myself, is he telling me to pull over? So there was an empty area where a building used to be right here to the side. So I just pulled over up in there, and so I pulled up in there, and then he pulled in behind me. But then I hear, put your hands outside the car. And I'm like, what? So I look in my rearview mirror, and there's about 39 police cars back here behind me. And that's not the scary part. The scary part is that every policeman back there had their guns out and were pointing at me. And I could see this in the rearview mirror, so I stuck my hands out the window. I said, my hands are out the window. And so they finally came up there and they took me out the car and they put me in the back, and then one of the detectives finally came up to the car and he asked me, he said, Mr. Meredith, has anybody explained to you what's going on here? And I said, no, sir. And he said, there was a robbery and you fit the description.
There we go.
course.
Yeah, so that, those two things there were, the close
That's
scenario
close.
experiences that I had
Yeah.
with that. But before that, as I said before, I was just very protective.
Yeah.
So I didn't really experience. I knew about those type of things that were going on, but I had never experienced it until those two things happened.
Little ghetto boy playing in the ghetto street. What you gonna do when you grow up and have to face responsibility? Will you spend your days and nights in a pool room? Will you sell cancer madness to the neighborhood little ghetto boy? You already know how rough life can be, 'cause you've seen so much pain and misery. Little ghetto boy, your daddy was blown away. He robbed at the grocery store. Don't you know that was a sad, sad old day? All of your young life you've seen such misery and pain. The world is a cruel place and it ain't gonna change. You're so young and you've got so far to go. But I don't think you'll reach your goal, young man, hanging by the boom door. Look out, son. Little ghetto boy, when you become a man, you can make things change. Hey, hey, if you just take a stand, you got to believe in yourself and all you do. You've got to fight to make it better. You'll see how other people will start believing too. My son, things will start to get better. Hey, everything's got to get better. I declare, I believe that today. Just as soon as you make up your mind, go ahead on and do what's right. I said everything has got to get better. Everything has got to get better. I'm depending on you, little brother. Everything has got to get better. I'm depending on you,
I want to comment on what you just said. My dad raised us like that too. We always, yes ma'am, yes sir. They were older than us. And I found myself in a dilemma because my best friend is 20 years older than me. And so we met at work, so I would call her by her first name. She would call me by my first name, and that was fine until I met her husband. And then her husband is 10 years older than her. And it made me feel so uncomfortable calling him by his first name, but I couldn't call her by her first name and then call him Mr. Brian, and so, but all the while, my dad is in my head saying, you're not supposed to call that man by his first name, because it's so ingrained in me. You always say Mr. or Miss.
Yes, I still say yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am.
I do
To
too.
people older and younger. Yes.
Absolutely.
But see, what was instilled in us was the importance of our ancestors.
Yes.
They knew that knowledge was being handed down, and survival knowledge was being handed down. And we respected our elders.
Absolutely.
And the Bible teaches you to respect the elders.
You're right.
So it's ingrained in our culture, in Black culture, that honor, that respect for your elders, all the way back to Africa, is ingrained in us.
It
Yes.
is.
Not only respect for your elders, but respect for females.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
I tell people here now, when we're going through a door, incidentally, I do work here at the museum also, right? And when some of my coworkers are going through the door, Tammy, you can attest to this, Miss Tammy. When we're going through the door, and one of the ladies will stand back to open the door for me. I said, no, I can't do that. I said, my grandmother would turn over in her grave. She knows that I'm letting a lady open the door for me.
Right.
You know, so it was those type of things that were ingrained in us, you know, to walk on,
The outside.
the outside.
Yes, of the sidewalk, yes.
Yes.
You know, always make sure the lady, you know, the female person is on the inside, and you know.
Like that too, because the children on the inside of us.
Yes, that's right, to protect them. I was a young mother, and I just remember when my son started talking, I was still living at home, and he said yes, and my daddy said, nope, you tell that boy to say yes, ma'am, to you.
Yes.
And I thought, ooh, okay. You know, and my kids did grow up like that, absolutely. I was a young mother, but he had to say yes, ma'am to me. That was great.
Thank you again for coming out.
Thank you.
Thank you.